Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Baker from Prosymmetry, and I'll be leading today's kind of webinar going over the timesheet capabilities within Tempus. I'm going to go ahead and give it about 2 more minutes, see if anybody else is lagging behind a little bit, and wait for them to join. And then around 11:05 Eastern Central Time, we'll be starting today's webinar. Okay, so it's around 11:05 over here in the Eastern Central Time. So I'm going to go ahead and start today's presentation or webinar. I'm going over the timesheeting capabilities within Tempus. So if many of you on the call probably have the timesheeting capabilities, and today we're going to be going through some of the configuration options that are available to you, how to kind of from start to finish set up timesheets as well as your users within Tempus. Then move towards kind of what the end user will experience when entering in their timesheet, what their view would look like, and how to go about having them enter in their time. Moving on to then finally some of the or the ability for the kind of approver to go in and start approving their timesheets. So I greatly appreciate everybody who's joined us today, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. And before I do so, I just want to make one more, just say one more thing where if you have any questions kind of along the way as we go through the demonstration, please feel free to provide them in the chat window, and we can definitely get to them at the end of today's webinar. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to navigate over to my Tempus environment. And the first thing that we'll be covering today is the timesheet configuration side of things. So this is a different license than your normal Tempus license. There is an additional cost to the timesheet proponent, but if you do have access to it, when you navigate here to admin settings, you will have this option for timesheets down here in the bottom right, which will cover 2 different tiles: timesheet period management as well as timesheet configuration. So both of these will be very important on the configuration side of your timesheets, and I do recommend that you start with the timesheet configurations. So within here, there's going to be a multitude of different options available to you to kind of work within the timesheets in your system, and we will be going through a lot of the most important of the settings within here. And the first one I want to start off with is just the week start. So when you're new to the timesheeting and you're setting up some of the periods, this will be the start date of your week. This can be changed to any day based on how you want your end users to first see the timesheet when they log into the system. So if it's typically a Monday and it should be Monday to Sunday, you can go ahead and do it that way. If you want it to start on a Wednesday for some reason, you can do that as well. So you will have the option to configure this. And then the next option we have, and this is one of the most important options within timesheets, is this non-working days. So we allow you to enter in time on any particular day of the week within your timesheet. So that can be Monday through Sunday, have every day available to them. However, you do also have the ability to exclude particular days if your users particularly don't work on those days. So that typically will be Saturday and Sunday if that's the case. Maybe you don't want them entering in on Sunday only, but you want that Saturday to be available. You'll go ahead and configure this here. And the reason I say this is a very important one, because it's one of the only options within here that you want to make sure that you configure before you create your timesheet periods. So later in today's webinar, we will go through how to create those periods, and the updates that you make with this particular setting will not retroactively update your existing periods. So it's very important to have these set up correctly from the get-go. If not, then you could run into the issue where you want to change them, you already have your periods created, then you'd have to go back, delete your existing periods and recreate them. So this is a very important setting to get configured right off the bat, and probably the most important one, since all the other options you will be able to kind of change whenever you want and impact your actual the configuration within Timesheets in its entirety. So very important to get this one set up. And I'm going to say they can enter in time Monday through Saturday. However, Sundays will not be available for them. Next, you have your dominant unit, and in most cases, this will be time. But if you do want to change it to FTE for a particular reason, you can go ahead and do so. I'll be leaving mine as time right now. And then lastly, you also have active units on this top side, which will allow you to pick and choose what units you want to have available to your end users. So if you strictly want them to only enter in their timesheets using time, you can go ahead and deselect those different options. Maybe you want them to have the ability to do man days as well. You can go ahead, change that to man days, and that will allow you to have both those options available to them. So it will be dependent on your dominant unit. So if dominant unit is time in this case, you will at least have to have time selected, and vice versa. If it's FTE, then FTE will also have to be selected. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave FTE, time, and man day selected. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and the next options are just some general configuration options. So like I was saying previously, these options can be changed at any point in time and they will impact your system. So if you need to tweak these at any point in time, feel free to do so, and you should see those changes right after you save the configuration screen. But the first option that I want to go over is saved approved allocations to your project actuals. So as many of you are aware, when you go into a project within Tempus, you have the ability to view your planned as well as your actual allocation. And having this option enabled will allow you to save back those actuals into the project when a timesheet becomes approved. So if this is disabled, that's not a big deal. You will still have access to the timesheet information that was submitted within reportings using some of the timesheet dimensions available and timesheet measures. However, if you do want it to be seen within the project and have those hours reflect within there, you can go ahead and enable these hours, and once the timesheet becomes approved, those will be then written back to the project itself. And then kind of an option, I'm going to skip down a couple that I want to mention as well that relates to the same kind of approval or actuals being saved back when a timesheet is approved, is this write weekend data into the work week option. So this option right here allows the information that is that would have been saved on a weekend to be written back into the project as well. So a little bit of background there. Tempus runs on kind of a 5-day work week. So on any project side of things or the capacity for your resources, you will see it's a 5-day work week, Monday through Friday, where hours can be available Saturday and Sunday. They'll still be displayed within the view. However, you will not have the option to add capacity for your resources onto a weekend, as well as you do not have the option to add any allocation or demand on those given Saturday and Sunday days within a project. So in timesheets, though, it's a little bit different. We do give you the capability, if you do enable it, to add those weekend values. And so to make sure that we're accounting for any actuals that may be saved into here, you can enable this option, which will do just that. We'll essentially take any days that were, or any hours that were saved on the weekends themselves, and equally distribute it throughout the work week, so it's at least being accounted for on the project side of things. So very important, if you're saving your actuals back and you also have non-working days and Saturday and Sunday are available in that sense, then you will most likely want to have this option enabled. Okay, so the next option I'm going to move up here is just allow timesheet users to view their planned allocation. So we do have an option here when you're viewing a timesheet where they can kind of get a nice representation of what their planned allocations look like on those given days. So this will be a toggleable option within there where they can say, okay, I'm viewing my timesheet, what was initially planned for this particular day. They can see that, and then they can enter in their hours accordingly to see if they're over or under what was actually planned for them. So these can be changed at any time. I'm going to go ahead and enable it, so then when we get into viewing the timesheet itself, you can see what that will look like on the end user's perspective. And then the next one is kind of a very similar option just on the approver side of things. So if you wanted to enable this just for your approvers or for one or the other, you can go ahead and do so, and it'll just give them that same option. Next, we have options to control if the user will have the ability to view the information in a period view. So typically when you navigate to a timesheet, you're going to see each individual day within that period. So if it's a 7-day work week, you're going to see essentially a grid having every single day of the week, Monday through Sunday, within there. However, this will give them the option to change that grid to only have a couple, or at least one column within there, or one column for time entry, where it's going to assume it kind of at that period level or a weekly level if it's a 7-day work week. So it can help if they're just trying to give provide a bulk input of their hours. How many hours did I work on this given week on this particular project? If that's a use case that you typically hear and you want that to be available to them, you can go ahead and enable this option. They will be able to toggle between the two views. It'll just give them the ability to do so. And then the same description is going to be for this allow timesheet approver to see this period view. It's going to govern the same functionality just on the timesheet approver side of things. The next option we have here is this timesheet time entry option, which is going to allow you to specify what types of tasks you want to see within a user's timesheet. So we will have 3 options here. We have the all, project, and task. If this is set to all, any and all available tasks that they're assigned to or they have through the self-service capabilities will be displayed within here. So they'll see the generic tasks as well as any of the customly defined tasks that they are assigned to. However, you do have the option to change this because there has been many use cases where we see, oh, well, we customly define our tasks, but the generic task is still being displayed and we want to remove that. And if that is the case, you can go ahead and use this task mode. This is going to only allow customly defined tasks to be displayed within the timesheet, even if they are assigned to the generic task itself. So if that is your use case, you may want to consider selecting this to task mode. And then we also have the reverse fashion where maybe you only use the generic task, maybe there's some customly defined tasks on your projects, but you don't want them to assign any time to those. You can go ahead and set this to project. And what that will do is make sure that only the generic task is available within your timesheet. Any of your customly defined tasks will not be displayed whatsoever. Okay. Next, we have auto open and close behavior, which is very important when you're managing your timesheets on that maybe a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, and you want them to automatically open and close so changes aren't being entered past a given point in time. So when this is disabled, you will see that these 2 options I just had below are not displayed. However, when I enable it, you can then specify a period open date and a period auto close date. So this can be from the start date and then up to 10 days prior. So let's say we wanted this to open or the period to open 3 days prior to the period start. We can go ahead and do that. And then maybe you want them to have an additional week or so for them to enter in their time after the particular period is closed. So you can go ahead and do that. And this way you won't have to manually open and close your periods as time goes on. And really quick background on what open and closing a period means. So when a period is open, it does allow the end user to go in there and actually provide their timesheet hours that they've worked on. However, once that period closed or is closed, they won't be able to make any additional updates to those given periods unless you were to reopen the period for them. Next, we have project owner approval. So this provides a secondary level of approval based off of the project owners assigned to a given project. So if you were looking for that secondary level of approval, you can go ahead and enable this and then configure some project owners for your project. We have a self-service timesheet flag, which will give the users a little bit more control on what particular assignments they want to add. And we'll be going over this a little bit more in depth later in today's webinar. We have a generic labeled task. So the generic task or task within Tempus, there have been some use cases where they may want to rename it within timesheets. So by providing a different value within here, the generic task will be displayed as something different for your end users. This does not change how it is being displayed within the project or on the reporting side of things. This will be strictly on the timesheeting side of things. Next, we have 4 options for maximum and minimums, hours per day and hours per timesheet. So by default, you'll see it's 5,000 maximum per day and 5,000 maximum per timesheet, and then 0 and 0 for minimums. So if you want to kind of have some control on how many hours they can enter within a given week or a given period or on a given day, you can go ahead and configure these options to do so. Last, we have 4 more options that we'll be covering, which is first one is mandatory notes for projects. So as we go through today's webinar, you will see that you have the ability to add some notes at an assignment level. If you want to enforce those notes being required, you can go ahead and select the particular projects within this dropdown. And this will make it so if they assign any allocation to this particular task, the end user will have to go ahead and provide a comment within there. Next, you have auto approve options. So this is a list. Right now, I have no timesheet users in my system. However, this list will be populated based off your timesheet users, and you can go ahead and select them if you want them to be auto approved. This will make sure that they don't have to go through the approval process. Maybe this is for some of your administrators or higher ups within the environment, within your organization that are entering in their time, and they don't need that approval process necessarily. Okay. And then last option here I want to cover is this hide projects from timesheets. So if there's particular projects that you know have allocation assigned to them and you don't want them to be displayed within your end user's timesheets, you can go ahead and select on this option and pick and choose the projects that you're thinking about hiding from the view. And then the options down here is this going to be generating and controlling the view. So we do have the by period view, the consolidated view, and all timesheets view. So you can pick and choose which options that you want to see within their timesheet, and then also pick the default view down below. And this heat map down here, this will be utilized within some of the reports or the out-of-the-box timesheet reports. If you want to set the thresholds, you can go ahead and do that down below, and we'll see what that looks like here in a little bit. So once you have your timesheet configuration set up, we can go ahead and hit save. And then the next step will be to set up the timesheet periods within Tempus, and that will be found right to the left of your timesheet configuration tile, right here. So this particular view is just going to allow you to view your active periods within Tempus, as well as create additional periods with if needed. So right now I have no periods created in my system. So even if I had users set up to use timesheets, they would not have the ability to enter in any time because I don't have any periods set up or kind of blocks of time for them to be able to provide their hours for. So the first step, if you have none created, is to go up here to the green plus icon to create some. And this will be pretty straightforward. What you can do here is provide the name of the period itself. By default, it's going to be week 1. But if you have a different naming convention, maybe you want it to be 2021 week 1, or maybe you want to put the particular time frames themselves, you can go ahead and do that. It is up to you guys on how you want to specify this information. And then once you have the period name defined, you can go ahead and select on the start date that you want this to start on. So it's going to try to start on the given week if you don't have any created, or if you do have some created, it's going to go to the first available week to be created. So in my case, I don't have any particular periods in here, so it's starting at 4/19. Next, you can define how many days in a period you want. So at minimum, this will be set to 7. So if you can't, you won't be able to go lower than 7 in this case. However, you will be able to go higher if needed. So maybe you want to have a timesheet period last 2 weeks, or maybe you want to do it at a monthly level. It is up to you based on how you normally would enter, or your end users would enter in their timesheets. And then the last option we have here is the period count. So right now this is set to 1, so I'm creating 1 period within my system. However, if you wanted to create multiple periods simultaneously, maybe you wanted to create your periods out for the entire year, you can go ahead and use these plus and minus icons to dictate that, or you can simply just enter in a number and then it will generate that period. You will see that the end date will change based off of this. So you can see now my period end dates or my periods are ending on 4/17/2022. And then I can go ahead and hit add period to create those periods. It's important to note that the way that the period name will work in this case is based off of whatever you provide up here, and then it will add kind of a number at the end, iterating based off of the weeks that you have available. So right now I have 2021 week 1. I would expect to see 2021 week 1, 2021 week 2, 3, 4, and so on up to 52. So if I go ahead and add these periods in here, you will see that now all these periods are created. We have 2021 week 1, week 2, 3, 4 going on, as well as you can see the date range for each one if you have it added in the consolidated view, as well as the status of if the period is opened or closed. So within here, once you have your periods created, you can go ahead and open and close particular periods where needed. These will also auto open and close based off of that auto open and close logic setup and configuration. So if you're doing that, you may not have to actually ever change the statuses manually. However, you do have the ability to do so by finding the status column for the period. Let's say 2021 week 1 in this case, selecting on open, and then hitting save. So once you do so, this will allow your end users to then go in there and provide their timesheet hours on that particular period. So you also do have the option to do this in a bulk capacity. So if you want to select multiple periods, or you can select up here to select all. And then if you wanted to open those up, you can go ahead and do so by selecting all, finding one, selecting open, and then opening all your periods. Okay, so opening your periods does give all users access to provide hours to those given time periods as long as they have some allocations assigned to them. And that may be a concern, especially maybe you don't want the period happened 3-4 weeks ago and you don't want to open it to everybody to potentially make changes, but you only want to open it up to a particular few resources. You will have the option to do that as well. So if we go over here to our status and hit this edit icon, just like we saw before, you can go between open and closed. However, if it is set to close, you will also see an option for exclusive access. So this will be based off your timesheet users, and unfortunately in my system, I don't have any set up. However, this list will be populated based off of those, and say you only wanted to open it up for a couple resources, you can go ahead, select on those, and then hit save, and that will essentially close the period for anybody that was not selected down below and open it up for the selected resources. So very useful if there's only a couple few resources that need to provide time since maybe they forgot, or maybe they're a new hire and they didn't have time sheeting capabilities, they need to backfill those. They can go ahead, provide that information, open it for just them to ensure that they're the only ones updating their existing timesheets. Okay, so with that being said, once we have that done, at this point in time, your timesheets are configured, and the next step will be setting up your users within the system to actually go ahead and submit their timesheets as well as approve timesheets, which will be pretty straightforward. And to do that will be managed within this resource management tile. And the first step will be to set up your timesheet approvers. These are going to be your users that will approve your users' timesheets. And it's best to be done in this order because we'll need approvers set up or within the system, so then we can assign them to our users. So let's say in this case, we wanted to set up my administrator account as a timesheet approver. What we do here is we navigate to our administrator, find the is timesheet approver flag, and then set it to yes. So in this case, it's already set to yes. This will give them the ability to approve timesheets based off of the resources that have their timesheet approver set to that particular user. So this timesheet approver is going to be dictated, or the dropdown is dictated based off of users that have is timesheet user set to yes. So right now, administrators, the only timesheet approver, so it will be my only available option. However, if you have multiple different resources that have this is timesheet approver flag set to yes, you should see them displayed within this dropdown. So that's how you'll set up your timesheet approver. The next step will be setting up your timesheet users. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new user right here. And I will just name this timesheet user 15. And within here, there'll be two main steps to setting up your timesheet user. First one is making sure that their timesheet approver down here is set to their particular timesheet approver at your organization. So in this case, I'm going to set this to administrator. And then the second step will be underneath the user identity, making sure this is timesheet user flag is set to yes. And I'm going to go ahead and hit create. So that is at minimum what you need to do to set up your timesheet users. This will give them the capability kind of Outside that, you will also want to make sure that they can actually log into the system. So that can be either through your single sign-on and the information provided through there, if you have that configured, or a custom login and password. And since I don't have SSO in the system, I'm going to go ahead and just provide this, and I'll just name this timesheet user, and then provide a password here. So they will need to at least be able to log into the system to fill out their timesheet, as well as have those couple other options enabled. I'll go ahead and save that. And the last thing I just want to mention as well is if your users are strictly timesheet users, so they'll only be going into Tempus to fill out their timesheet, I would highly recommend selecting or keeping your global role set to no global role. It's perfectly fine if you have a different global role set up, but if they really only should be using their timesheets and they shouldn't be seeing projects or resource management or any of the other tiles that some of your higher permission users have within the system, you want to make sure this is set to no global role, which will only give them access to that My Timesheets tab that we'll see here in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead, save this once more. And so once we're done there, your timesheet user has been set up and your timesheet approver has been configured, and they'll be ready to go through that timesheet process. Just a couple things I want to mention within here is if you do need to do this in a bulk capacity, I would highly recommend doing it within the view itself. We can add is timesheet user, is timesheet approver, and timesheet approver. And if you needed to update multiple users, very easy to do within this view by using some of the bulk editing capabilities within here and just editing it directly within the grid. Just something I wanted to mention in case you have 15, 20 resources and you don't want to have to click into each user individually. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another tab real fast, and I'm going to log into my timesheet user. And so with that basic configuration that we set up, their screen is going to look very similar to this. They'll see a welcome option right here, just saying their name, and then they'll only have access to this My Timesheets. So right now, as it is, if I navigate to my timesheet, you will see it's basically empty and I can't even submit hours to any projects. This is going to be due to how the pre-population of some of these tasks are within Tempus. So it's going to be looking at your existing planned allocation within the system, and then it's going to be creating rows for them based off that information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to navigate back to my administrator account and just assign this resource to a couple projects. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll just create timesheet project right here. I'll go ahead and just configure this real fast. And then let's say in April, our timesheet user, 15, is going to be working 150 hours on this project on the planned data set or planned allocation. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And now when I go back to my view over here on the left, or my other user view, so I'm back to my timesheet user 15. Now when I open this up, I'll see that timesheet project within here assigned to the particular task, which in this case was the generic. So this will, the task will vary based off of the particular task as well as the project will. So if there's different projects or tasks that they're assigned to, that should be displayed down below. So all the pre-population is going to be based off the planned allocation that they're assigned to within the system. You do also have this add assignments that we'll cover here in a bit that can give them a little bit more control as well as give them additional options for particular tasks that they may want to add onto their timesheet as well. So once the end user is in the timesheet, it will be pretty straightforward, but there are some additional options I just want to cover within here. So when they navigate to their timesheet, it will navigate to the most current timesheet that is available to them. So as you can see, the week, right now it is the week of the 19th. So you can see that the period for the 19th has opened. If it was 3 weeks, for 2 weeks from now, we would see the 3rd of May and so on and so on. It will just be based off the current date. So we'll try to open up the current period if it is available. And then it will be pre-populated based off the time frame and the allocations assigned. So as we saw a second ago, I assigned my resource 150 hours in April. So we should see this particular assignment available for any month in April. However, if we go to May, since I don't have that planned allocation actually assigned in May, you can see that task is not available for them to enter in time on. So to navigate, you can use these arrows up here in the left, or you can always use this particular option for the calendar picker, see the periods and navigate that way as well. It will be personal preference there. You have a couple views up here in the top right. One is a consolidated view, and right now I just don't have this enabled, and you can see what that looks like here in a bit. But one of the views I really like to utilize is this all timesheets view. This will just give you a nice roll up of all the timesheets that have been created, and you can pick and choose the timesheets based on this view as well. So if you, as time goes on, you can see, okay, what particular timesheets have I submitted, how many hours have been submitted to them, what is the status of the period, what's the particular date range, and then if they want to quickly navigate to a particular period where they may need to make an update to, so maybe it was rejected and they need to make some updates within there, they can just select on the particular timesheet in here, and then I'll go back to that period view for the selected timesheet. A couple more things. One are some of the additional options that we had configured within our timesheet configuration. First one is the planned allocation. So when enabled, it's just going to show you a additional line up above showing you how much planned allocation was assigned on each one of these given days. You have the by period view, which will essentially give you two columns, one for your timesheet and assignment name, and then an additional one just at that period level. So this would be entering in time for the entirety of the week, not just for the individual days. So if I added 30, you will see at the daily level, though, it will be equally distributed between the available days within the period. So I'm just going to go ahead, remove those. Next, you also have your different units of measure that you can work between. So you have time, FTE, and man days. So that will be based off of the configuration that you have set up in timesheet configuration. If you only have time, you should only see time available and you won't be able to work between the different views. But if you have multiple, your end users will have that capability. You have the ability to add some comments at an overall level as well. So you will see a show comments on each one of your timesheets, where then you can provide some additional information based on the information or the hours that you've entered within the timesheet. So these are my comments. As well as you can do this not only at an overall level, but also at an assignment level as well. So based on each particular assignment within here, you will see this kind of message box, which you can select to provide an assignment level comment. It will tell you the particular project it's for and on what particular task. And then you can go ahead and provide this information. You can go ahead, save that, and then you will see that whenever a comment is available, it will be highlighted blue. Next, they can go ahead, provide their hours. They can simply go in here, enter in the allocation. They have drag and drop capabilities. You also can use Control C and Control V to copy and paste based on how their personal preference and how they want to enter in their hours. And then once they have gone through, they filled out their timesheet and they're ready to submit it, they can go up here and hit submit. So I do want to touch on the save real fast. This will be very useful if they're entering in their time. And in this case, maybe they enter in every day. They don't want to submit their timesheet. They just want to enter in their individual day, keep it in a draft state until the entire week has been finished. That's where you'll want to use the save. So essentially keep it in this draft state where they can continuously update their timesheet and then work towards submitting their timesheet at the end of the week. And then lastly, you have the submit right here, which will actually move it to the next step in the approval process where then they can approve, the timesheet approver can take action on the given timesheet itself. So once selected, you will be prompted with this modal window, just letting you know that your timesheet is submitted, and it will become read-only once it has been submitted, and just confirming that you want to submit it. If I go ahead and hit yes here, you can see that the status has changed to submitted, and I can no longer make edits to the timesheet itself. So you do have the option to, at any point in time, retract your timesheet if you do need to make those further edits. That will be captured within the comments down below. So you can see kind of the workflow of the particular timesheet as well. So it went from saved to submitted. If we were to retract this, which will then allow us to make further updates, let's say we did so in this case, we hit retract and select yes to confirm. You will also see that within this kind of within the workflow down below, seeing those different changes. And once it's retracted, you can then make additional updates if needed. Maybe I work 6 hours on each day, Monday through Saturday, instead of the 5. We retracted it, provide the updates, and then go through the submission process once more. Okay, so once the timesheet is submitted, from the end user perspective, they're basically 95% done. The next step will be for the timesheet approver to kind of take action upon any of the submitted timesheets that are available to them. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my other Chrome window and go back to my administrator account, who is the timesheet approver of that resource. So as the timesheet approver, when you navigate to the homepage, you will have the timesheet management tile. And if you have any pending requests that need action taken upon them, you will see that notified based on this kind of notification one icon here, or based off of however many particular pending approvals are there. So if there was 4, you would see a 4 here. If it was 8, you'd see an 8. In this case, it's only the individual particular pending request. So I can go ahead and open this up, and then you'll see it be navigated to this timesheet manager approval view, which will have all the particular timesheets that you need to take action upon. So by default, this will be set to a period view. So you see the your current period. In this case, it was the 19th of April to the 25th of April. And then you'll see all the users that have submitted their timesheet on that for that given week. And you'll be able to take action upon those. Or you can also go up here and go to a resource view, which will then change just based on the name of the resource. And then you can see all the periods that they have submitted their time for. So if you want to take action upon it, there will be 2 ways. One will be an individual way to view the individual's timesheet, review the hours, and then approve or reject it based off of that particular, the information you're seeing. Or if you have multiple and you want to update this in a bulk capacity, you do have options over here to do so. So over here on the left, you can see that we have some checkboxes. And then once some of them are selected, you do have an approve and reject option available. So if there was more in here, I could select them all, approve and reject them based on that. Or you can always drill into the particular timesheet itself to get a little bit more insight on what they submitted and see if it is acceptable in this case. So what here, I'm going to go back, or I'm going to select into here, which will navigate us to the timesheet. And then you can see exactly what they entered in here. You can see all the comments that were left. You can see the particular projects they worked on and the hours that they entered, as well as if they've added any assignment level comments. You can click into here and view that information as well. And just like we saw in the other view, you do have the option to show overall totals. So you can see a total for the overall assignment and for the overall week. You can view the planned allocation if you want, as well as you can view it in a by period view as well. So these are also governed by the overall configuration in that timesheet configuration tab. So if they are enabled, that will give them access to this. If not, then they will not have those options. You also have the ability to enter in particular or navigate between the different time or units of measure. So you have time, FTE, as well as man days. And based on whatever one that you select or are available to your users, you will see those options as well. So I'm going to go back to just my normal view. We see the hours, and then if this looks acceptable, you can go ahead. Optionally, you can leave a comment, say this looks good. Thank you. And you can approve the given timesheet, or if it does need to be rejected, you can go ahead. So the hours are wrong or submitted to the wrong project. You can leave those particular notes in here and then hit reject. So on the rejection, it will be required to leave a comment here. So if you were to reject it, what's going to happen is essentially it will leave your view, and then as the end user itself, in this case, my timesheet user, when we navigate here, you will see a very similar notification icon right here saying that there's one particular timesheet that has been rejected or recalled in this case. When you navigate and open up timesheets and navigate to that period, you will see that it's not rejected. You can see the notes that were left over or left by the timesheet approver. Make the appropriate updates once more. I'll just change this to 7 in this case. and then resubmit it. So once it's resubmitted, it's going to go through kind of the same state. So it's once it's rejected, they make the updates, they submit it once more, and then the timesheet approver will have to take action once more. And so I'll go back to my administrator account once more. We see that icon up above, or notification icon. We can then drill in to the timesheet, review it once more if this looks good, leave a comment, and then go ahead and we can go select and approve. So once it is approved, this will essentially archive the timesheet, as well as, since we have the options to save those actuals back, it will save the actuals back into the timesheet, into the project itself. So now if I navigate back here and I go to project management, and I will open up the project that we just created, my timesheet project, and go over to my allocations. You will see those 42 hours that were entered here directly within the project itself. So one last thing on the timesheet approver side of things is working with your archived timesheets. So if we navigate back to my timesheet management tile, you will see that there are 2 tabs up above, and by default it will be on a timesheet manager approval. However, you do also have an archived tab up above, and this is going to allow you to view all of your archived timesheets based off of the users that you are the manager for. So in this case, it is only timesheet user 15, but if I were to select on this, it would show me all of the given resources that I'm the manager for and view their archived timesheets. So this is going to be very important for 2 reasons. One, you'll be able to recall your timesheets in this fashion. So let's say you went through the approval process, you approve the timesheet, however, there's still an error and you need to recall it for them. What you can do is find that particular timesheet, and then you will have this recall option up above, which will then essentially reject the timesheet once more after it has been archived, and then allow them to take action on that timesheet and go through that approval process once more. And then lastly, you have one more option within here that could be important to you, and that is the ability to delete timesheets. So over here on the right, you will see a deletion option. And if you need to delete a timesheet for any reason, you can go ahead and do so. This is governed by its own permission on the back end within Tempus. So right now, most likely only administrators have access to that, the ability to do so. However, that can be configured if needed. Okay, so with that being said, that covers the kind of overall configuration and then the end user as well as timesheet approver process when working with timesheets. However, there are 2 very important options I want to cover real fast. One of them being the self-service flag, and the last one being the impersonation. So we do have this self-service capability, which is very much utilized by many of our clients. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that option, because it could be something you could potentially utilize in your case. And to set that up, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to admin settings, and I'm going to first navigate to attribute management. So what is going to be required for this is it's going to need a Boolean project attribute to kind of govern that self-service capability. So in many cases, I'll see a lot of our clients just name this self-service flag. Make sure you're on the project side of things, and then set this to a bool and go ahead and create. And then once that attribute is configured, we can go to timesheet configuration and go ahead, select on here, and then you can see that we have a list of all the Boolean attributes on the project side of things. We have is proposal as well as that self-service flag we just created. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And before we move into kind of configuration, I just want to give you a brief background of what the self-service capability will do. So when we previously filled out that timesheet, you saw that there was a pre-population based off of assignments that they were allocated to on that given time period. However, there are many cases where they may need to add a particular task that they weren't allocated to, and that's where the self-service capability comes into play. If configured correctly, what you'll be able to do is you'll still have the pre-population based off of their assigned or the assignments that they're working on. However, if there are additional tasks that they may need to add that aren't being pre-populated, they'll be able to use that add assignment drop down, go through the list and pick and choose additional assignments that they weren't allocated to on their timesheet. So very useful. And what I've seen in the past is if there are smaller projects that they may not be allocated and you want to just give everybody the ability to add them, doing it that way, as well as for PTO projects or any administrative time that you want to track. You can create a project that can kind of govern some of those administrative exceptions within there, and then have them add that kind of in an ad hoc fashion whenever they need to add that onto their timesheet. So what I'm going to do is I just set up my self-service flag. Next, I'm going to go back to my Tempus homepage, and the first step will be finding the project that you want to enable self-service capability for. And in this case, I'm going to create my own and create a new one first, and I'll just name this admin exceptions and go ahead and just provide a start date for the entirety of this year. From here, I'm going to go to my tasks, and I'm just going to create a couple custom tasks. I want to see PTO, vacation, create that, vacation, and let's say leave is my last one. And I can go ahead and save and check that in. And then next, we're not going to assign any allocation because we don't want to go through the process of actually assigning resources. We want them to just be able to add this project whenever they want to their timesheet based off of those particular tasks that we had available. So first step will be making sure that the self-service flag for this project is set to yes. So in this case, I'm going to use this choose columns and find my self-service flag that was created, add it into the view, and then set this to yes. So that'll be the first step to adding this into the timesheet. The second step will be going over into the project, navigating to this build team option by selecting on the three-dot icon, and then adding any of the resources that will need to have this project available to them based on the timesheet as well. So in this case, I know on my timesheet user 15 needs the ability to add this in here. Go back real fast, search for timesheet user once more, select on the checkbox, and then hit save. So now that the project is set up for self-service capabilities, as well as the user has been added onto the team, now if I navigate back to my resource or my timesheet user account, I'll just go back and open up timesheets once more and navigate here. You will see that this add assignment option is blue, and I can actually pick and choose any of those admin exception tasks, even though they're not this user has not assigned to them whatsoever. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility in that case, where if there are some of these projects where you need them to add and resources may or may not have been planned on them, you can give them the capability to just pick those tasks on those particular time frames to allow them to add it, make sure they're fully accounting for the hours that they're working on. Okay, so with that being said, the last option I just want to make sure everybody's aware of, it's the impersonation option. So for administrators, there are times where people may be out of the office and someone needs to fill in a timesheet for them, or maybe do the approval process for those individuals. And instead of having to share credentials or do workarounds, we do have an impersonation option, which will allow you to do so. And to find that, will be within the admin settings option. And then over here under access management, you will see this impersonation management option here. And from here, we can go ahead and just create a new impersonation. So there'll be a couple steps within here, pretty straightforward overall though. First one will be select the impersonator. So this will be the resource that will be kind of running the impersonation. So in many cases, this is going to be your higher level users. In this case, it's going to be my account. I want to impersonate this particular user. So I'll select on my administrator account. Next will be the user that will be impersonated. So within here, you can select one or multiple resources if you're setting up multiple impersonations. So in this case, I'm just gonna look for my timesheet user 15, go ahead and select on him because I want to impersonate that particular timesheet user. Next is the active date range. So this is gonna give you access to all of their timesheeting information if you're entering their timesheet, or the ability to approve any timesheet if you're impersonating a timesheet approver. This is just letting you know what is the active date for this impersonation. So let's say I just wanted to be able to impersonate this resource for this week. If I go ahead and set up this way, I can impersonate that user and update their information on this given week. However, once next week comes around, if I tried to run that impersonation, I wouldn't be able to. And then next you have a couple options on what you want to impersonate. So you do have options for resource requests, but more importantly in this topic, you also have options for your be able to approve a timesheets as well as submit timesheets. So since timesheet user right here, timesheet user 15 is not a timesheet approver, but a timesheet user, I'll go ahead, enable submit timesheets and go ahead and create this. So once that is created, to actually run the impersonation, all you'd have to do is up here in the top right-hand corner of the screen, I'll select on profile, and then you will see your impersonations down below. If we select on the play icon to the left, you'll essentially start that impersonation, and now I'll be able to fill out timesheets on their behalf. So if I go to my timesheets, you'll see the timesheet information for this particular resource. You can see the 7 hours that I entered in previously, as well as we can go in here and fill out as if we were a timesheet user 15. Okay, and then if you want to quit the impersonation, all you have to do is hit quit impersonation right up here. So all this information is tracked when you are impersonating. So you can even see here on the right-hand side, I logged in administrator in SuperGrid on behalf of timesheet user 15. So you can see when someone runs those impersonations. So there'll still be that audit trail if someone was impersonating the user and making updates that maybe they shouldn't have in this case. So you do have that audit trail over here based off of when they were being impersonated. Okay, so with that being said, that covers the majority of the content that we'll be going over today. Just to kind of reiterate real fast what we covered, we started off today by going through the timesheet configuration options within the admin settings, which showed a lot of the different options and configure things that are configurable when your users are working within their timesheets. Next, we went through and created the periods within timesheet period management. The periods are just going to be those time frames for when they can enter in their time. And within here, we created them as well as went through opening and closing periods to make sure your users have the ability to do so and enter in time on particular periods that are active and ones that are not. Next, we went through and set up our timesheet users and timesheet approvers within resource management. And then lastly, we went through submitting a timesheet from the end user's perspective, as well as approving it when you are the timesheet approver. So at this time, it does not look like there are any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's session. Thank you everybody for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your customer success manager, and they'll be able to assist you on anything or any issues or any problems or anything that comes up. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.